Black woman gets married off to a crippled Korean trillionaire to save her sister, but when she gets home, the family compelled her to dance to their tune. She watched her husband get humiliated 3 times, and the 3rd time, she had to show who she really is. The sound of Mireille's hand connecting with Yeonsu's face echoed through the dining hall, filling up the space. Sarah Mitchell's fork clattered against her plate so loud. She'd been in South Korea 8 days, no longer meek or cowed. Married to Kang Yeonsu for 7 of them now. This was the 3rd time she'd watched, but she'd make her final vow. His younger sister struck him during meals without restraint, but this would be the last time Sarah played the saint. Sarah rose from her seat with such force and sudden might that her chair scraped violently. She was ready for this fight. Before Mireille could lower her hand with that smug smile, Sarah's palm connected with her cheek in stunning style. With twice the force Mireille had used on Yeonsu's face, the Korean woman learned that Sarah knew her place. The slap reverberated through the cavernous room. Time seemed to stop. Grandmother Kang Seo-yeon's chopsticks froze midway to her mouth. Tae-jin's wine glass hovered at his lips. Young Junwoo's eyes went wide as saucers. And Yeonsu, sitting in his custom wheelchair at the head of the table, stared at his new wife as if seeing her for the first time. Mireille stumbled backward, her hand flying to her reddening cheek, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. You hit me." Sarah's voice was dangerously calm, each word precisely enunciated. "Touch my husband again, and I'll do far worse. I don't care if you're a sister, the Queen of England, or God herself. You will not disrespect him in my presence." The silence that followed was suffocating. Grandmother Seo-yeon slowly placed her chopsticks down, her weathered hands trembling with rage. At 73 years old, she had ruled the Kang family with an iron fist for 4 decades. No one had ever dared challenge her authority, least of all some American woman they'd brought in as a convenient broodmare. "How dare you?" the old woman hissed, her voice like ice cracking. "Do you have any idea who we are? What we can do to you?" Sarah turned to face her, and something in her dark eyes made even the formidable matriarch hesitate. "Do you have any idea who I am?" Tae-jin laughed, but it sounded forced. "You're a nobody. A physical therapist drowning in debt who sold herself into this marriage for $500,000. You should be grateful we're even letting you sit at this table. Is that what you think?" Sarah's smile didn't reach her eyes. She looked at each of them in turn, Grandmother Seo-yeon with her designer hanbok and cold eyes, Tae-jin with his expensive suit and calculating expression, Mireille still clutching her face in disbelief, and young Junwoo trying to make himself invisible. Finally, her gaze landed on Yeonsu, whose dark eyes were fixed on her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Let me make something abundantly clear," Sarah continued, her voice carrying through the room with quiet authority. "I'm married into this family, which makes me a Kang now, and I protect what's mine. So here's how this is going to work from now on. You will treat Yeonsu with respect. You will speak to him with courtesy. And you will never, ever lay a hand on him again. Are we understood?" Mireille finally found her voice, shrill with indignation. "You can't tell us what to do. This is our family, our home, our company. You're just some outsider who'll be gone in a year when this ridiculous arrangement ends." "We'll see about that," Sarah said quietly. She walked to Yeonsu's wheelchair, released the brake, and began pushing him toward the door. "Where do you think you're going?" Grandmother demanded. Sarah didn't even look back. "Away from toxic people who don't deserve his presence. Enjoy your dinner." As they left the dining hall, Sarah could feel the weight of their shocked stares. The moment they were out of sight, she felt Yeonsu's hand touch hers on the wheelchair handle. She stopped, coming around to face him. Dear listener, if you're enjoying this story, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, like the video, leave a comment, and let us know where you're watching from. His expression was unreadable, but his voice held a tremor she'd never heard before. "Why did you do that? They'll make your life hell now. Grandmother controls everything. Your sister's medical care, your living situation, everything about this arrangement. You just made a very powerful enemy." Sarah knelt beside his wheelchair, meeting his eyes at level. This close, she could see the faint scar along his jawline, the exhaustion in his eyes, the way his shoulders hunched as if expecting another blow even from her. "I made a vow," she said simply. "For better or worse. In sickness and in health. I don't break my promises, Yun-Soo. And I don't let anyone hurt the people I've sworn to protect. But you barely know me. This marriage is just a business arrangement. You don't have to." "Don't I?" Sarah interrupted. "I've been here a week. I've watched them belittle you, mock you, treat you like you're less than human because you use a wheelchair. I've seen the way they corner you when they think no one's watching. I've heard the things they say." Her voice dropped. "And on our wedding night, I saw Taejin threaten you in the hallway. I heard what he said about finishing what he started." Yun-Soo's face went pale. "You heard that? I hear a lot of things." Sarah stood, gripping the wheelchair handles again. "They think I'm just some desperate woman who'll dance to their tune. They have no idea what I'm capable of." That night, after ensuring Yun-Soo was settled in his suite in the east wing of the mansion, Sarah returned to her own adjacent quarters. The rooms were beautiful, decorated in whites and creams with traditional Korean accents, but they felt like a gilded cage. She locked the door, checked the windows, and then went to her closet. From the back of the top shelf, hidden behind designer handbags she'd never asked for, she pulled out a sleek laptop. Not the one the family knew about, the obvious one she used for email and video calls with her sister. This was different. Custom-built, encrypted, untraceable. Sarah sat cross-legged on her bed, fingers flying over the keyboard with practiced ease. Within minutes, she had bypassed the mansion's security system and was accessing the family's private network. Her reflection in the laptop screen showed a woman transformed, no longer the demure, uncertain bride, but someone else entirely. Someone she'd thought she'd left behind. Sarah's past wasn't as simple as a physical therapist with student debt. That was true, but incomplete. Before her sister's illness had forced her to go legitimate, Sarah had been known in certain circles as Shadow Phoenix, one of the most talented hackers on the dark web. She'd worked for private security firms, exposed corporate corruption, and yes, sometimes stolen from those who had too much and deserved less. But she'd also been trained in Krav Maga and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu by her ex-girlfriend, a former Mossad agent. When you operated in the shadows, you needed to know how to handle yourself when the digital world became physical. Sarah had broken a man's arm once when he'd tried to kill her for exposing his human trafficking ring. She'd put 2 men in the hospital who'd attempted to kidnap her sister for leverage. The Kong family thought they were dealing with a helpless woman. They were about to learn otherwise. Her fingers moved across the keyboard, creating backdoors into every system the family used. Taejin's computer was laughably easy to access. He used his birthday as his password. Miray's phone was synced to the cloud with minimal security. Even grandmother Seo Yun's supposedly secure financial accounts fell within an hour. What Sarah found made her blood run cold. Taejin's files contained everything. Emails discussing the accident that had left Yun-Soo paralyzed 3 years ago. Mechanical reports showing brake line tampering. Text messages with a hired mechanic. And worse, plans for a second attempt. According to a message dated just 2 days ago, Taejin was growing impatient. The board meeting to select the new chairman was in 10 days, and he needed Yun-Soo completely out of the picture. Sarah's jaw clenched. She copied everything to her encrypted drive, creating multiple backups in secure locations around the world. But she didn't stop there. She accessed Kong Industries' corporate structure, shareholder agreements, and board bylaws. She found grandmother's offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, filled with money siphoned from the company. She discovered Miray's blackmail operation, photographs and documents used to control business partners and politicians. She uncovered Junwoo's school records showing the boy was being psychologically abused by his father. And then she found the most important document of all, the succession clause in the corporate charter. According to the bylaws, the chairman position went to the family member who held the majority shareholder support and was nominated by the board. Tae-jin had been systematically buying loyalty, making promises, and ensuring that when the vote came, his name would be the only one presented to the Blue House for presidential approval, a formality for a corporation of Kong Industries size, but a required one. Sarah smiled slowly. She knew exactly how to change that. Over the next 3 days, Sarah played the part of the chastened bride. She apologized to Mireille for the slap, though the words tasted like ash in her mouth. She bowed to grandmother Seo-yeon and requested forgiveness. She stayed quiet during meals, kept her eyes downcast, and seemed to accept her place. The family relaxed, convinced they'd broken her spirit. They had no idea that each night, while they slept, Sarah was systematically dismantling their plans. She manipulated shareholder records, created digital trails of Tae-jin's embezzlement, and began carefully leaking information to key board members, anonymously, of course. She also spent time with Yeon-soo, and with each conversation, each shared moment, she felt something unexpected growing between them. On the 4th night, Yeon-soo invited her to his private study. The room was lined with books, dominated by a massive desk with multiple computer monitors. He gestured for her to sit. "You've been different since the dinner," he said carefully. "Quieter. It's not like you." Sarah met his gaze. "Would you prefer I kept slapping your relatives?" A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Actually, yes. That was the most excitement this house has seen in years." The smile faded. "But I'm worried about you. They're planning something. I can feel it." "Let them plan," Sarah said. Then, making a decision, she leaned forward. "Yeon-soo, do you trust me?" He was quiet for a long moment, his dark eyes searching her face. "I don't know you well enough to trust you completely. But I want to. You're the first person in 3 years who's treated me like a human being instead of a broken thing. Then trust me enough to ask no questions for the next week."
"Can you do that?"
"What are you planning?" "To give you back what they took from you," Sarah said simply. "Your dignity, your company, your life." Before Yeon-soo could respond, the study door burst open. Tae-jin stood in the doorway, his face flushed with alcohol and anger. Behind him were 2 of the estate's security guards, massive men who looked more like thugs than professional security. "Well, isn't this cozy?" Tae-jin sneered. The cripple and his whore, plotting together. Grandmother was right to be suspicious. Sarah stood slowly. "You should leave." "I don't think so." Tae-jin stepped into the room, the guards flanking him. "See, we've been too soft on you, Sarah. Too welcoming. You need to understand your place in this family. And that place is on your back, producing an heir, then disappearing." Yeon-soo's hands gripped his wheelchair armrests. "Brother, you're drunk. Go to bed before you say something you'll regret." "Regret?"
Tae-jin long-head hotly.
"The only thing I regret is that you survived that car crash. Should have checked the body myself." The admission hung in the air like poison. Yeon-soo's face went white, but Sarah felt an eerie calm settle over her. She'd suspected, had seen the evidence, but hearing Tae-jin confirm it ignited something cold and focused in her chest. "You did it," Yeon-soo whispered. "You tried to kill me."
Tae-jin frakked.
"You were always father's favorite, the golden son who could do no wrong. But look at you now, useless, broken, pathetic. At least you're finally good for something. Once you're dead and I'm chairman, I'll make sure they build a nice memorial statue. Maybe put it in the lobby." One of the guards moved toward Yeon-soo's wheelchair. That's when Sarah acted. She'd been calculating distances, angles, vulnerabilities from the moment they'd entered. The guard was 6'3", probably 240 pounds, trained in basic security protocols, but overconfident. He reached for Yeon-soo's chair. Sarah's elbow drove into his solar plexus with surgical precision. As he doubled over, gasping, She grabbed his extended arm, used his momentum against him, and flipped him onto his back. The sound of his body hitting the hardwood floor was enormously satisfying. The second guard rushed her. Sarah sidestepped, drove her knee into his kidney, then swept his legs out from under him. As he fell, she delivered a precise strike to the pressure point in his neck. He went limp. The entire exchange took less than 15 seconds. Tae-jin stared, his mouth hanging open. What the hell? Sarah turned to him, and whatever he saw in her eyes made him take a step back. You want to know what I am, Tae-jin? I'm someone you shouldn't have underestimated. Now leave. And stay away from my husband. You crazy bitch, Tae-jin spat. Do you know what I can do to you? To your sister? I'll have her medical care cut off. I'll have you deported. I'll destroy you. Sarah smiled, and it was terrifying. Try it. Please. Give me a reason. Tae-jin looked at his guards, still groaning on the floor, then back at Sarah. For the first time, uncertainty crossed his face. He backed toward the door. This isn't over. Grandmother will hear about this. You'll be out of this house by morning. We'll see, Sarah said calmly. After he left, Sarah locked the study door and turned to find Yeon-soo staring at her with an expression somewhere between shock and awe. Who are you? He asked quietly. Where did you learn to fight like that? Sarah pulled up a chair and sat facing him, her expression giving nothing away. I took some self-defense classes back home. Every woman should know how to protect herself, don't you think? Self-defense classes? Yeon-soo's eyebrows rose. Sarah, you just took down 2 trained security guards in seconds. That wasn't basic self-defense. She shrugged, her face innocent. I had a good teacher, and they weren't expecting me to fight back. Element of surprise. Yeon-soo studied her face, clearly not buying the simple explanation, but something in her steady gaze told him not to push further. You didn't have to do that. Defend me, I mean. They're dangerous people. You're my husband, Sarah said simply. Of course I had to. This marriage is just an arrangement. A business deal. You don't owe me. I made a vow, Sarah interrupted. Whether it's business or not, I keep my promises. Yeon-soo was quiet for a long moment, his dark eyes searching her face for answers she wouldn't give. Finally, he reached out and took her hand. His palm was warm, his grip surprisingly strong. Thank you. For protecting me. For seeing me as more than this chair. Sarah squeezed his hand back. You're so much more than they let you believe. True to Tae-jin's word, Grandmother Seo-yeon summoned Sarah to her private sitting room the next morning. The old woman sat like a queen on her throne, Marries standing behind her like a loyal courtier. Tae-jin was there too, a smug expression on his face despite the humiliation from the previous night. Ms. Mitchell, Grandmother began, her voice dripping with disdain. You've assaulted my grandson and 2 of our security staff. This is unacceptable behavior. I'm terminating your marriage contract, cutting off all financial support, and having you removed from this house. You have 24 hours to pack your belongings. Sarah stood calmly before them, hands clasped in front of her. She kept her expression neutral, almost apologetic. I understand you're upset, Grandmother. I apologize for my actions last night. The guards startled me, and I reacted on instinct. It won't happen again. The 3 family members exchanged glances, clearly surprised by her subdued response. I see, Grandmother said slowly, suspicion evident in her tone. Nevertheless, your behavior has been unacceptable. You will leave this house. Sarah bowed her head. If that's what you wish, I'll begin packing. I only ask that you honor the contract regarding my sister's medical care. That was the agreement.
Marries Crippled.
How pathetic. You come in here acting tough, and now you're begging. Sarah said nothing, keeping her eyes downcast. Inside, she was smiling. Let them think they'd broken her. Let them believe they'd won. You may stay, Grandmother finally declared, as if granting a great favor. But one more incident, and you'll be on the first plane back to America. And your sister's funding will be terminated immediately. Do you understand? Yes, grandmother. Thank you for your mercy. After she was dismissed, Sarah returned to her room and locked the door. Only then did she allow herself to smile. They had no idea what was coming. That night, while the house slept, Sarah sat cross-legged on her bed with her encrypted laptop. Her fingers flew across the keyboard as she dove deeper into the Kong family's digital infrastructure. She'd already mapped out their entire operation, every account, every file, every secret communication. Taejin's master plan was laid out in meticulous detail across his private server. He'd spent 2 years positioning himself for the chairmanship, buying board members' loyalty with promises of lucrative contracts and positions. He'd falsified reports to make Yun-soo look incompetent. He'd embezzled funds to finance his campaign. And most damning of all, he drafted the official nomination documents that would be submitted to the presidential office for final approval. In Korea, the chairman of a major conglomerate like Kong Industries required presidential approval as a formality. The board would vote, submit their nomination to the Blue House, and within days, the approval would come through. It was usually a rubber stamp process, but it was required nonetheless. Taejin had already prepared everything. The nomination letter sat in his private files, ready to be submitted the day after the board meeting. His name was typed in neat Hangul characters. Kong Taejin, nominated for chairman of Kong Industries. Sarah's smile widened as she examined the document structure, the digital signatures, the routing protocols. Then she got to work. She didn't delete anything. She didn't leave obvious traces. Instead, she created a shadow version of every document, every file, every communication. In her version, the name was different. Where Taejin's documents said Kong Taejin, hers said Kong Yun-soo. Every reference, every mention, every formal nomination, all carefully altered.
But she went deeper than that.
She accessed the board members' email servers, their personal devices, their cloud storage. Wherever Taejin had planted his version of events, Sarah planted hers. She manipulated timestamps, created false memory trails, embedded her changes so deeply into the system that it would appear as if Yun-soo had always been the intended nominee. She worked through the night, her eyes burning, her fingers cramping, but she didn't stop. This had to be perfect. One mistake, one trace of her interference, and everything would fall apart. By dawn, she'd rewritten digital history. When the board members woke up and checked their files, they would see Yun-soo's name. When Taejin opened his carefully prepared documents, he would find them unchanged until the moment they were transmitted. Then her code would activate, swapping every instance of his name for Yun-soo's. The beauty of it was the timing. No one would notice until the documents were already submitted to the Blue House. By then, it would be too late to change them without raising questions about fraud and forgery. Sarah closed her laptop and finally allowed herself to sleep for a few hours. When she woke, she acted as if nothing had happened. She had breakfast with Yun-soo, helped him with his morning routine, and played the role of the quiet, submissive wife. Yun-soo kept watching her with that thoughtful expression, as if trying to solve a puzzle. "You're different," he said one morning as she helped him with his physical therapy exercises. "Different how?" Sarah asked, guiding his leg through the range of motion. "I can't quite put my finger on it. You seem calmer. Like you know something the rest of us don't." Sarah smiled enigmatically. "Maybe I just sleep better than you do." "Sarah." He caught her hand, stopping the exercise. "I know there's more to you than you're telling me. The way you fought those guards. The way you handle yourself around my family. You're not afraid of them. Should I be? Most people are." She met his eyes. "I'm not most people. I'm beginning to realize that." He paused. "Whatever you're planning, whatever you're doing, because I know you're doing something, please be careful. They're more dangerous than you think." "So am I," Sarah said softly, then smiled to soften the words. "But I appreciate your concern." Now, let's finish these exercises. Your muscles are getting stronger. Over the next few days, Sarah observed the family's growing excitement. Tae-jin walked around with a permanent smirk, already acting like the chairman-in-waiting. Mireille was shopping for designer clothes for the celebration party she was planning. Grandmother Seo-yeon held court like a queen about to see her chosen heir crowned. Only Junwoo seemed subdued. The 16-year-old had been watching Sarah with increasing curiosity since the night she'd fought the guards. He started lingering near her, not quite talking to her, but clearly wanting to. Finally, 3 days before the board meeting, he approached her in the library. "Why did you fight for Uncle Yeonsu?" he asked abruptly. Sarah looked up from her book. "Because it was the right thing to do. Nobody does the right thing in this family." "Maybe that's the problem." Junwoo sat down across from her, his young face troubled. "My father says Uncle is weak, that the company needs strong leadership. But I've seen the way father looks at Uncle when he thinks no one's watching. Like he hates him. Like he wants him gone." Sarah closed her book, giving the boy her full attention. "What do you think?" "I think." Junwoo hesitated. "I think Uncle Yeonsu is the only one in this family who's ever been kind to me. When I was younger and did poorly in school, father would lock me in my room for days. But Uncle would sneak me food and books. He never told anyone." The boy's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "I don't want him to get hurt." Sarah reached across and squeezed his hand. "He won't. I promise you that." "How can you stop them? You're just one person, and they're powerful." Sarah finished. "Money and power aren't everything, Junwoo. Sometimes the smallest person in a room is the most dangerous, because nobody sees them coming." The boy studied her face. "You're going to do something, aren't you? At the board meeting." "I'm going to make sure the right person becomes chairman," Sarah said carefully. "That's all." Junwoo smiled for the first time since she'd met him.
Good.
"I hope you destroy them." The night before the board meeting, the family held a private dinner. It was a tense affair, with grandmother presiding over the table like a general reviewing her troops before battle. "Tomorrow," she announced, raising her wine glass, "the Kong family enters a new era. Tae-jin will take his rightful place as chairman, and we will finally move past the unfortunate circumstances of recent years." Everyone knew she meant Yeonsu's accident and disability.
"Det finns stor bryning."
"I want to thank everyone for their support. Father would be proud to see the company in capable hands again." He deliberately looked at Yeonsu when he said capable hands. Yeonsu's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Sarah felt her own anger rising, but she kept her expression neutral.
"Just one more day."
One more day, and they'd all see.
Mireille giggled.
"I've already planned the celebration party. Only the most important people in Seoul will be invited. It'll be the social event of the season. Make sure the press is there," grandmother instructed. "I want maximum coverage. The world needs to see that Kong Industries is stronger than ever." Sarah caught Junwoo's eye across the table. The boy gave her the slightest nod of encouragement. She smiled back. After dinner, Yeonsu asked Sarah to join him in his study. He looked exhausted, the weight of years of family abuse evident in the lines around his eyes. "Tomorrow is going to be difficult," he said quietly. "Watching Tae-jin take everything that should have been mine. Everything father built." "It doesn't have to be that way," Sarah said softly. Yeonsu shook his head. "You don't understand. The board has already decided. Tae-jin has been working on this for 2 years. The vote is just a formality. By this time tomorrow, he'll be chairman and I'll be." He trailed off, his hands gripping the armrests of his wheelchair. "I'll be even more irrelevant than I already am." "You're not irrelevant. Aren't I? Look at me, Sarah. I can't even walk. How can I lead a company when I can't lead myself?" Sarah knelt beside his wheelchair, taking both his hands in hers. "Your legs don't define your worth. Your mind does. Your heart does. And both of those are stronger than anyone in this family." He looked at her with such raw vulnerability that her heart ached. "Why do you believe in me when no one else does?"
"Because I see you," she said simply. "The real you."
"Not what they've tried to make you." "Tomorrow is going to be humiliating," Yunsu said quietly. "They're going to parade Taejin around like a prize while I sit in the corner. I don't even know why they want me there. Probably just to rub it in my face."
"Then don't go," Sarah said.
"I have to. As a board member, my presence is required. Company bylaws." Sarah smiled mysteriously. "Then we'll go together. And I promise you, tomorrow won't be what anyone expects." "What do you mean?" "Trust me," was all she said. That night, Sarah barely slept. She checked and rechecked her code, making sure every change was embedded, every failsafe was in place. At 3 a.m., she confirmed that Taejin had submitted the nomination documents to his assistant, who would forward them to the Blue House immediately after the board meeting. Everything was in position. The morning of the board meeting arrived with clear skies and warm sunshine. The event was being held at Kong Industries headquarters, a gleaming 50-story tower in the heart of Seoul's financial district. Media trucks lined the streets. Reporters jostled for position behind barriers. This was big news, the succession of one of Korea's largest conglomerates. Sarah helped Yunsu dress in his best suit, a navy blue Tom Ford that made him look every inch the corporate leader he should have been. She wore a simple black dress, elegant but understated. As they prepared to leave, Yunsu caught her hand. "Are you sure you want to come? It's going to be uncomfortable. My family will make sure of it." "I'm your wife," Sarah said firmly. "My place is beside you." They arrived at the headquarters building to find the main entrance packed with media. Camera flashes exploded as the Kong family limousines pulled up. Grandmother Seo Yun emerged first, dressed in an expensive hanbok, waving regally to the cameras. Taejin followed, his smile wide and confident, stopping to shake hands and make brief statements to reporters. Mireille posed for photos, her designer dress shimmering under the lights. When Sarah pushed Yunsu's wheelchair up to the entrance, the atmosphere changed immediately. A reporter called out, "Mr. Kong Yunsu, how do you feel about your brother becoming chairman?" Another shouted, "Is it true you're being removed from the board?" Laughter rippled through some of the crowd. Sarah felt Yunsu tense in his chair, his shoulders hunching as if to make himself smaller. She squeezed his shoulder reassuringly and kept pushing forward. "Look at him," someone whispered, not quietly enough. "The crippled heir. What a waste. I heard his wife is only with him for the money. American gold digger. Poor thing, pushing that wheelchair around. She must be desperate." More laughter. Sarah kept her face calm, but her hands tightened on the wheelchair handles. Yunsu's head dropped lower. "Sarah," he whispered, "maybe we should just go. This was a mistake." "No," she said quietly but firmly. "Hold your head up. You have every right to be here." "But they're—" "Let them laugh," Sarah interrupted, leaning down so only he could hear. "Let them think they've won. Just wait." As they approached the entrance, 2 security guards stepped forward, blocking their path. Sarah recognized one of them. He'd been there the night she'd fought off the others. His eye was still slightly bruised. "I'm sorry," the guard said, though he didn't sound sorry at all. "The main hall is for family only. You'll need to use the side entrance." "We are family," Sarah said calmly. "Direct family," the guard clarified with a smirk. "Mrs. Kong grandmother's orders. You and Mr. Kong Yunsu will be seated in the overflow area." Behind them, media cameras captured everything. Sarah heard the whispers, saw the reporters' excited expressions as they witnessed the public humiliation. This would be all over the news. The disabled son and his foreign wife, barred from their own family event. Yunsu's voice was barely audible. "Please, Sarah. Let's just go home." "Not a chance," Sarah said. She smiled at the guard with such sweetness that he actually looked nervous. The side entrance is fine. Lead the way. They were directed around the building to a service entrance, then through narrow corridors clearly meant for staff, not guests. Other attendees stared as they passed, the disabled heir being shuffled through the back like an embarrassment. Some looked away uncomfortably. Others didn't bother, hiding their amusement. The overflow area turned out to be at the very back of the conference hall, behind all the regular seating, partially obscured by a support column. From there, they could barely see the stage where the announcement would be made. It was a deliberate insult, putting them in the worst seats in the house. "I'm sorry," Yunsu said as Sarah positioned his wheelchair and sat beside him. "You shouldn't have to endure this. The humiliation, the way they treat us." "Stop apologizing," Sarah said gently. She took his hand, not caring who saw. "I chose to be here. I choose you. And in about an hour, everyone in this room is going to understand exactly what a mistake they made underestimating us." Yunsu looked at her, confusion and hope warring in his expression. "What are you talking about?" Before Sarah could answer, the lights dimmed. The murmur of conversation faded. The board meeting was beginning. At the front of the hall, the Kong family sat in a place of honor, grandmother Seo-yeon in the center, Tae-jin and Mireille on either side. Young Junwoo sat at the end, looking uncomfortable in his formal suit. Behind them, rows of board members, executives, and important shareholders filled the premium seats. Media cameras lined the walls, broadcast lights glaring. The chairman of the board, an elderly man named Director Kim, took the podium. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us for this historic occasion. Today, Kong Industries begins a new chapter in its distinguished history." Applause filled the room. Sarah watched Tae-jin straighten in his seat, his smile triumphant. Mireille was already dabbing at fake tears of joy. Grandmother sat like a queen, her expression satisfied. Director Kim continued, "The process of selecting our new chairman has been thorough and careful. The board has reviewed all candidates and made our decision based on merit, experience, and vision for the company's future." "Here it comes," Yunsu whispered. "The coronation of King Tae-jin." Sarah squeezed his hand. "Wait. We will now announce the candidates who were considered for this position," Director Kim said, pulling out a sheet of paper. The board reviewed the qualifications of the following individuals. He began reading names. Senior executives, board members, external candidates with impressive credentials. The list went on, each name greeted with polite applause. Tae-jin's name was called. The applause was thunderous. He stood, waving, soaking in the adulation. Cameras flashed. Reporters scribbled notes. Mireille clapped enthusiastically, and even grandmother allowed herself a small smile. The list continued. More names. More applause. Yunsu's name was not called. Sarah felt him slump in his wheelchair, the final confirmation that he'd been completely written out of his own family's company. Around them, people whispered, some glancing back at them with pity or contempt. "All candidates have now been presented," Director Kim announced. "The board will now vote on our selection for chairman." The voting process was quick, board members pressing buttons at their seats, the results tabulated electronically. On the large screen behind the podium, a progress bar filled as votes were cast. Tae-jin sat forward eagerly. This was it, the moment he'd been working toward for 2 years. "The votes have been counted," Director Kim announced. "And now, we will reveal the board's selection for the next chairman of Kong Industries." The room fell silent. Every eye fixed on the screen. Tae-jin was already starting to rise from his seat, preparing for his moment of triumph. Director Kim pressed a button, and a name appeared on the massive screen in both Korean and English. Kong Yunso. 별표 별표 강연수 별표 별표. For 3 full seconds, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. The silence was absolute. Then chaos erupted. Tae-jin shot to his feet. "What? That's impossible. There must be a mistake." Mireille shrieked, The screen is wrong. Fix it. Grandmother Seo-yun's face had gone ashen, her hands gripping the armrests of her chair so tightly her knuckles turned white. Director Kim stared at the screen in confusion, then down at his papers, then back at the screen. There must be. Check it again. Tae-jin roared, his composure completely shattered. This is fraud. Sabotage. Someone has tampered with the system. The board members erupted into heated discussion. Some pulled out their phones and tablets, frantically checking their files. Others shouted questions at Director Kim, who looked completely bewildered. Ladies and gentlemen, please. Director Kim called out, but his voice was drowned in the chaos. Let me verify the documents. It's a mistake. Marries shrieked at the nearest camera. My brother Tae-jin is the nominee. This is obviously a technical error. Media reporters were having a field day, cameras swiveling between the shocked family and the name blazing on the screen. This was the story of the year, a succession plan apparently gone disastrously wrong in front of the entire nation. In the back of the hall, Yun-soo sat frozen in his wheelchair, staring at the screen with his mouth slightly open. His hands trembled on the armrests. Sarah, he whispered, his voice shaking. Sarah, what is this? This has to be a mistake. My name wasn't even on the candidate list. The system must have glitched. This isn't possible. Sarah said nothing. She simply sat beside him, her face calm, her hands folded in her lap. Inside, her heart was pounding, but she showed no emotion. Sarah, did you hear me? Yun-soo turned to look at her, confusion and panic in his eyes. We need to tell them it's an error. They'll think I did this somehow, that I manipulated the vote. Sarah, please say something. She met his gaze steadily, but remained silent. There was something in her eyes, a depth, a knowing, that made him pause. You. He started, then stopped.
No.
No, that's impossible. How could you? Before she could respond, Director Kim's voice cut through the chaos.
Please.
Everyone, please. Let me check the source documents. Give me 1 moment. He frantically typed on his laptop while assistants huddled around him. Board members pulled up their own copies of the nomination files on tablets and phones. One by one, their confused expressions turned to shock. It says Kang Yun-soo on my copy too, one board member called out. Mine as well, another confirmed. The nomination letter in my email clearly states Kang Yun-soo, a third added, sounding bewildered. Tae-jin stormed the stage, shoving Director Kim aside to look at the laptop himself. His face went from red to purple as he scrolled through the documents. This is impossible. I wrote those documents myself. My name was... He stopped abruptly, realizing he'd just admitted to preparing his own nomination in front of everyone. Check the cloud backup. Marries shouted from her seat. Check the original files. The technical staff scrambled. Minutes passed like hours as they pulled up archive after archive. Every single document, every nomination letter, every formal submission, all of them bore Yun-soo's name. Not recently edited. Not suspicious. The metadata showed they'd been created weeks ago, with proper timestamps and digital signatures. It was as if Yun-soo had always been the intended nominee, and everyone had simply forgotten. Grandmother Seo-yun finally found her voice, though it came out as a harsh rasp. This is corporate espionage. Someone has hacked our systems. I demand a full investigation before we proceed. With respect, Madam Kang, Director Kim said carefully, the documents all appear legitimate. The timestamps, the signatures, the routing protocols, everything is in order. According to our records, Kang Yun-soo has been the board's intended nominee for the past 6 weeks. That's a lie. Tae-jin slammed his fist on the podium. I am the nominee. This is my chairmanship. The hall descended into chaos again. Arguments broke out between board members. The media captured every moment, broadcasting the Kang family's very public meltdown to millions of viewers. Throughout it all, Yunsu sat in his wheelchair at the back of the hall, looking like a man who'd just witnessed a miracle he didn't understand. He kept glancing at Sarah, who remained perfectly still, perfectly calm. "Sarah," he whispered again. "What did you do?" She finally turned to him, and for just a moment, she allowed herself the smallest smile. "I kept my promise. I told you I'd give you back what they took from you." Before he could respond, she stood and moved behind his wheelchair. "Come on. They're waiting for you." "What?" "No, I can't, Sarah. There's obviously been some kind of mistake." "There's no mistake," she said firmly, and began pushing his wheelchair forward. The path down the center aisle seemed impossibly long. As Sarah pushed Yunsu toward the stage, conversation stopped. Heads turned. The crowd parted almost automatically, people stepping aside to let them through. Some faces showed confusion. Others showed shock. A few showed something that might have been respect. The same people who had laughed at them an hour ago now watched in stunned silence as the man they dismissed rolled past them toward the stage. "Sarah, stop," Yunsu pleaded quietly.
"Please."
"Everyone is staring. This is humiliating. They all think." "Let them think," Sarah said calmly, continuing forward. "Hold your head up. You belong here more than any of them." Taejin saw them approaching and stepped forward to block their path to the stage. His face was twisted with rage. "Don't you dare come up here. This is my position. I don't know what you did, you and your little wife, but I will expose this fraud." "Step aside, Taejin." A new voice cut through the room like a knife. Every person in the hall immediately fell silent and turned toward the entrance. Even grandmother Seo-yeon stood up, her expression shifting from rage to shock. Walking down the center aisle was Minister Cho Sung-min, the second secretary to the President of South Korea. At 62, he was one of the most powerful men in the country, known for his integrity and his no-nonsense approach to corporate governance. 2 presidential security guards flanked him. The entire room bowed. It was instinctive, automatic. When Minister Cho entered a room, you bowed. Even grandmother Seo-yeon dipped her head in respect. Minister Cho walked directly to the stage, his expensive shoes clicking against the marble floor. He climbed the steps and took the podium from a stunned Director Kim. The room remained in absolute silence. "Ladies and gentlemen," Minister Cho began, his voice carrying authority that demanded attention. "I apologize for the interruption, but given the confusion surrounding today's proceedings, the Blue House felt it necessary to send a representative to clarify matters." Taejin stepped forward eagerly. "Minister Cho, thank you for coming. As you can see, there's been a terrible mistake with our nomination documents. If you could just—" "There's been no mistake," Minister Cho said flatly. The words hit acidity in the fraud. The room was utterly silent. Even the reporters had stopped their frantic typing to listen. Minister Cho's expression hardened. "Let me be absolutely clear. The Blue House has reviewed and approved Kang Yun-soo as the next chairman of Kang Industries. This decision is final. Any further challenges to this appointment will be viewed as a challenge to the presidential office itself." He paused, his gaze sweeping across the frozen faces of the Kang family before settling on the crowd. "Furthermore, if any party here, any board member, any shareholder, any family member continues to contest this appointment after this clarification, Kang Industries will be placed under government investigation for corporate fraud and manipulation. The company will be suspended from all government contracts for a minimum of 5 years. All business operations will be subject to intensive auditing. Is that understood?" The threat landed like a bomb. 5 years of government suspension would destroy Kang Industries. Billions of dollars in contracts would evaporate. The company would be crippled, possibly beyond recovery. Board members exchanged panicked glances. Shareholders looked ill. Even Taejin, for all his rage, understood the magnitude of what Minister Cho had just said. "I'll ask one final time," Minister Cho said, his voice cutting through the silence like steel. Does anyone here wish to contest the appointment of Kang Yun-soo as chairman? Silence. Absolute, deafening silence. Grandmother Seo-yun remained standing, her face a mask of barely controlled fury, but she said nothing. Tae-jin's hands were clenched into fists at his sides, his whole body trembling with suppressed rage, but he kept his mouth shut. Mireille stared at the floor, tears of frustration streaming down her face. Good, Minister Cho said with finality. He turned and looked directly at Sarah and Yun-soo at the back of the hall. Mr. Kang Yun-soo, please come forward. Your country and your company await their new chairman. Two security personnel immediately moved to assist. They approached Yun-soo's wheelchair with professional courtesy, one on each side. Sarah stepped back, allowing them to help navigate the wheelchair up the ramp that had been hastily deployed to the stage. As Yun-soo was brought forward, the atmosphere in the room shifted dramatically. It started with one person, a junior board member in the third row who had always admired Yun-soo's intelligence before the accident. He stood and began to clap. Then another person joined. Then another. Within seconds, the entire hall erupted into applause. It wasn't the polite, obligatory applause that had greeted Tae-jin's name earlier. This was genuine, thunderous, building with each passing moment.
People stood from their seats.
Some wiped tears from their eyes. The applause grew louder and louder until the walls seemed to shake with it. Sarah stood at the base of the stage, watching her husband's face transform. The shame, the defeat, the years of humiliation, all of it melted away as he looked out at the sea of standing, applauding people. Tears streamed down his face, and he didn't bother to hide them. An elderly board member, a man who had worked with Yun-soo's father, was openly weeping. Finally, he was heard to say, "Finally, justice." A young executive shouted. Chairman Kang and others picked up the chant. Chairman Kang. Chairman Kang. Even some of the media reporters were visibly moved, their cameras capturing every moment of this unprecedented reversal of fortune. Yun-soo was positioned behind the podium, his wheelchair at the perfect height for the microphones. Minister Cho handed him the official appointment certificate, sealed with the presidential seal. Cameras flashed like lightning as the moment was immortalized. Director Kim, recovering from his shock, stepped forward with a trembling smile. Chairman Kang, would you like to say a few words? Yun-soo gripped the edges of the podium, his hands shaking. He looked out at the crowd, at the cameras, at his family's stunned faces. Then he turned and looked directly at Sarah, standing at the side of the stage. Yes, he said, his voice rough with emotion. I have something to say. The room fell silent again, everyone leaning forward to hear the new chairman's first official words. Before anything else, Yun-soo began, his voice growing stronger, I need the whole world to know something. To understand something. He gestured towards Sarah. This woman, Sarah Mitchell Kang, my wife, she is the reason I'm standing here today. Not standing literally, he added with a self-deprecating smile that drew gentle laughter from the crowd, but standing as a man who hasn't given up, who hasn't let them break him. Sarah's eyes widened. Yun-soo, you don't have to. Yes, I do, he interrupted firmly. He looked back at the crowd. For 3 years, my family told me I was worthless, useless, a burden. They made me believe that this wheelchair defined my entire existence. They made me feel less than human. His voice cracked, and I started to believe them, until she came. He pointed at Sarah again. This woman, who owed me nothing, who had every reason to take the money and ignore me, chose to fight for me instead. She stood up to people who could destroy her. She protected me when no one else would. And somehow, his voice filled with wonder, somehow she made this miracle happen. I don't fully understand how, but I know in my heart that Sarah is behind this. She saved me. The crowd was completely silent, hanging on every word. So before I accept this position, before I say anything else, I need everyone here to understand that Sarah Kong is not some foreign gold digger, as I've heard people whisper. She is not some charity case I took pity on. She is the strongest, most brilliant, most courageous person I have ever met. And I am honored, his voice broke again. I am honored beyond words that she chose to stand beside me. Sarah's vision blurred with tears. This wasn't how this was supposed to go. She was supposed to stay in the background, let him have his moment. But he was giving her credit in front of the entire nation. Yun-Soo wiped his eyes and continued. Now, having said that, I need to address something important. I accept this position as chairman. I am grateful for the trust the board and our government have placed in me. But I also know my limitations. Confused murmurs rippled through the crowd. My disability does not make me less capable intellectually, Yun-Soo said firmly. But there are practical challenges. I cannot travel easily. I cannot attend every meeting physically. I cannot be the public face of this company in the way a chairman traditionally needs to be. He paused, then looked at Minister Cho. Therefore, I would like to propose something unprecedented. Minister Cho raised an eyebrow. Go on. I request permission to appoint an official proxy, someone who will represent me and Kong Industries in all public and operational capacities. This person will have my complete authority to make decisions, sign documents, and speak on behalf of the company. I will remain chairman and retain final decision-making power, but this proxy will be my hands and feet in the world. The crowd erupted into whispers. This was highly unusual, but not technically illegal. And who? Minister Cho asked carefully. Did you have in mind for this position? Yun-Soo smiled through his tears and pointed at Sarah. My wife, Sarah Kong. I appoint her as chairwoman proxy of Kong Industries. The hall exploded.
People gasped.
Reporters shouted questions. Board members looked at each other in shock. This Black American woman, married into the family barely 2 weeks ago, was about to be given control of a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate? Minister Cho studied Sarah for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, he smiled. An unconventional choice. But I see the wisdom in it. The law allows for such arrangements. He turned to Sarah. Miss Kong, please step forward. Sarah's legs felt like water, but she forced herself to walk up the ramp to the stage. As she reached Yun-Soo's side, he took her hand. Miss Kong, Minister Cho said formally, do you accept this appointment as chairwoman proxy of Kong Industries, with all the responsibilities and authorities it entails? Sarah looked out at the crowd, at the shocked faces, at grandmother Seo-Yun, who looked like she might faint, at Tae-jin, purple with rage, at Mireille, her mouth hanging open, at young Junwoo, who was grinning from ear to ear. Then she looked at Yun-Soo, tears streaming down both their faces. I accept, Sarah said clearly. Minister Cho pulled out another document. Then, by the power vested in me by the Office of the President, I officially recognize Sarah Kong as chairwoman proxy of Kong Industries, effective immediately. She will have signing authority over all company operations, control of all 36 subsidiary corporations, and a compensation package commensurate with her position. He glanced at the document. Including a base salary of $8 million annually, plus performance bonuses and equity. The number hit Sarah like a physical blow. $8 million. For a woman who'd been drowning in debt 2 weeks ago, it was incomprehensible. The applause that followed was deafening. Sarah couldn't hear, couldn't think. She could only feel Yun-Soo squeezing her hand as tears poured down both their faces. They were crying and smiling and holding onto each other like lifelines. This wasn't supposed to happen. Sarah had only wanted to save him, to give him back his dignity. She never imagined this. Never dreamed she'd end up here, standing on the stage, given authority over an empire. As the applause continued, Sarah saw grandmother Seo-Yun stand up, her face pale. She walked toward the stage on shaking legs, Mireille and Taejin following behind her. The crowd quieted, sensing drama. Grandmother reached the stage and actually bowed, something Sarah had never seen her do. Chairman Kong. Chairwoman Kong. Her voice was strained, her pride clearly wounded. We owe you an apology. We were wrong. We misjudged you both terribly. Taejin bowed as well, though his face was red with humiliation. Brother,
I'm sorry.
For everything. I was ambitious and cruel. Please forgive me. Mireille was crying, her makeup ruined. Appa, Sarayuni, please. We're family. Can't we start over? The crowd watched, waiting to see how the new chairman and chairwoman would respond. This was the moment of mercy, of reconciliation, that Korean culture valued so highly. The gracious thing would be to accept their apologies, to offer forgiveness, to keep the family together. Sarah looked at them. These people who had tormented Yeon-soo for years, who had tried to kill him, who had treated both of them like garbage. She thought about all the nights she'd heard Yeon-soo crying in his room, believing he was worthless. She thought about the bruises, the insults, the calculated cruelty. She took the microphone. No, Sarah said simply. The single word echoed through the silent hall. Grandmother's head snapped up.
What?
No mercy, Sarah said clearly, her voice carrying to every corner of the room and to every camera broadcasting this moment across the nation. You had 3 years to show kindness to Yeon-soo. 3 years to treat him with basic human dignity. Instead, you abused him. You tried to kill him. You made him believe he was worthless. And you did it all for money and power. Her voice grew harder. You only apologize now because you lost. Because we have the power and you don't. That's not remorse. That's strategy. So no, I will not accept your apologies. I will not give you positions in this company. I will not pretend we're one big, happy family. She looked at each of them in turn. You will receive exactly what the law requires, nothing more. Any company's shares you own will remain yours, but you will have no operational authority. No seats on the board. No influence whatsoever. You will watch from the outside as Yeon-soo, and I rebuild what you tried to destroy. The crowd was absolutely silent, shocked by her boldness. Sarah continued. And Taejin? The evidence of your attempt to murder your brother has been forwarded to the prosecutor's office. Expect charges to be filed within the week. As for the embezzlement I found in your accounts, the tax authorities are already investigating. Taejin's face went from red to white. You can't. I already did, Sarah said calmly. You're done. She turned to Junwoo, still sitting in the family section, and her voice softened. Junwoo, you're different. You showed kindness when no one else did. If you want a place in this company, in this family, you'll have it. But that's your choice. The young man stood up, tears streaming down his face, and bowed deeply to both of them. Sarah handed the microphone back to Minister Cho and turned to Yeon-soo. He was staring at her with an expression of complete awe. Was that okay? She whispered. He laughed through his tears. That was perfect. Minister Cho cleared his throat.
Well,
that was certainly direct. But this is a family matter, and the law supports your decisions. He addressed the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the new leadership of Kong Industries, Chairman Kong Yeon-soo and Chairwoman Proxy Sarah Kong. The applause was thunderous. People were standing, cheering, some crying. In the front row, Grandmother Seo-yeon stood frozen, her world crumbling around her. Taejin and Mireille looked like they might collapse. But on the stage, Sarah and Yeon-soo held hands, tears streaming down both their faces as the impossible became reality. The crippled son who'd been thrown away. The foreign woman who'd been called a gold digger. Together, they'd just taken control of one of Korea's largest corporations. And they'd done it without showing mercy to those who'd shown them none. As cameras flashed and the crowd celebrated, Sarah leaned down and kissed Yeon-soo's forehead. We did it, she whispered. No, he said, looking up at her with love and gratitude shining in his eyes. You did it. You saved me. You saved us both. Sarah smiled through her tears. That's what wives do for their husbands. Even in arranged marriages? Especially in arranged marriages, she said, and they both laughed. The celebration continued around them, but in that moment, they only had eyes for each other. Two broken people who'd found strength in each other. Two outsiders who'd defeated an empire. And as the sun streamed through the windows of Kong Industries headquarters, Sarah Mitchell Kong, the black woman they'd all underestimated, stood tall beside her husband, ready to build something better from the ashes of what had been destroyed. No mercy for those who'd shown none. But for each other, all the love in the world. The end. If you enjoyed this story of justice, love, and sweet revenge, please hit that like button and subscribe for more incredible stories. Drop a comment below telling us what you thought of Sarah's epic takedown of the Kong family. Should she have shown mercy, or did they get exactly what they deserved? Let us know, and we'll see you in the next story.